So this is the way I, Professor McHale, has devised a definition for performance management. It's a system leveraged by organizational leadership, utilized to properly measure, train, and evaluate subordinate performances as it relates to overarching organizational objectives as they cascade to departmental and team goals. There's a lot that's said in that, so I'm going to break it down just really quickly. So, a performance management system a properly designed one really needs to focus on what are the organization's objectives. How does that impact a specific department? So how does your finance department roll up into your overarching organizational strategy and objectives? How does the business development team roll up into organizational strategy and objectives? And then once you've figured that out, the idea is for then the departmental lead needs to figure out how each member on their team is going to accomplish goals that roll up into those organizational objectives. So the individual has goals that are going to roll up into the department goals that will then roll up into the organizational goals. So that's how performance management should properly be created. So I'm sure all of you have done the reading. What today's going to kind of focus on, I'm really going to kind of dig deep into the chapter reading that you all read earlier. And the reason why I'm doing that is I'm going to give you kind of real life examples from my experiences that happen along the way as we kind of go through what you may have already read. And I understand that you read it, but it's really good to hear things a couple of times to really understand them. So when you think about performance management, strategic is really important. I talked about strategic objectives by overarching organizational goals. The performance management system and the way in which one is written for an organization should link individual goals directly to overarching organizational goals, which we just talked about. It should be administrative, right? So if we're going to leverage this information to tell us what parts of or what skills our talent needs to be developed, this information will help dictate that. So what does that mean? Christine, myself, has been performing as an IO psychologist for 10 years. What we really want Christine to work on is how to leverage her change management skill set for learning and development in leadership, right? So that could be a goal for me. The business then needs to create a training system that provides me the ability to train those skills, to learn those skills, or to bring them out. So one of the most important things that I want to emphasize here is, as an IO psychologist and as an employee working inside a performance management team or on an HR team that handles performance management, you are going to be in close conjunction with your learning and development team, because what information you gain from the performance management system, what are the skills that the organization is lacking, what changes are happening in the marketplace that we need to start training our employees on, those are things we need to start working with our L&D team to bring out and bring in training programs for us to be able to train our talent to do that. So that's what we mean by administrative and leveraging the data we collect in our performance management systems on how they're going to help us better train our employees. It's also information that's going to tell us how you're going to adjust salaries, right? Everybody knows the common reasons why a performance management system happens. And most often, organizations do not make this link. In fact, it never happens. It never happens unless you have an organizational psychologist on your team who raises the flag. We need to be in communication with the L&D team. We need to have clear metrics for why salary adjustments are being made. We need to have clear and precise reasons why promotions are being made. Let me tell you what happens often in the work of corporate America. Promotions are not often dictated by how well a person does a job, but rather how well they talk about doing their job. Okay? It is so important that you know that as an IO psychologist, our job is to alleviate bias and to make sure these programs truly measure performance of employees, because the people who talk the most often get heard the most, obviously, and they get the promotions. Number two, if people aren't talking, oftentimes promotions or raises in salary come based on friendships in the workplace. So it is our job to remove those biases. This also is going to dictate demotions and whether or not somebody should be on a performance improvement plan. It's also known as a PIP. We will go into that in a few weeks, but performance improvement plans are processes put in place in order to avoid litigation should an employee be let go based on the goals set in their performance improvement plan. Any questions? Okay. So the performance management system is also designed to communicate with our employees. Oh yes, hi, Tyler.
I'm so sorry
Go ahead.
I have a really quick question. I know HR and L&D need to be very connected. What about recruiting in this mixture of HR?
What about what? I'm sorry, you were a little bit low. I couldn't hear that. But
Recruiting and talent acquisition?
yeah, recruiting and talent, like love that. Well, so love that question. And for me, I think those two must be hand in hand, right? You can't acquire talent without recruitment understanding what it is the talent is, what the talent is that we need to go out there and get, and what knowledge, skills, and abilities that talent needs to have. Recruitment could just be going blind saying we need to fill a person in this role with just this background in X. But there are so many specific things that each organization has from a recruitment perspective that talent acquisition and recruitment certainly need to be hand in hand. Does that answer your question, Tyler? Did you have that question based like on, are you experiencing something specific right now?
Yes. I'll touch base with you after class just because like I don't want to take up too much of our 2 hours, but
Okay, no
definitely
problem.
have some
Okay,
questions on that.
great. So communication here, although Tyler brings up a good point, internal communication, this is really about manager to employee communication. It's really important that performance management systems, to Tyler's point earlier today, are not just annual. I actually prefer a continuous coaching methodology. It's what I coach all of my clients on. It's not something that a lot of organizations really adhere to. And I think a lot of them don't do so because it's so time consuming. And if you read in one of the vignettes in the book, people put off talent management until the very last second. They go through, they start to fill in their content, and then they want to just get it off their plate so they can go back to their quote real job, right? So a lot of that has to do with lack of training and the lack of sharing the importance of what a performance management system is going to give both managers and employees. So communication is really important as you go through a performance management system, and it shouldn't just be annually. Like I said, I prefer a continuous coaching. All right. So in addition to the purposes of a performance management system, we want to focus on employee development. That's not just code, that's communicating and coaching is different, but giving feedback on positive and negative performance is really important, especially in the moment. Because here's what happens in a lot of performance management systems that are annual. People then think about the last 3 weeks or the last month of an employee's performance and they completely ignore the previous 11 months. Not the most ideal way to perform and to evaluate the performance of an employee. Additionally, organizational maintenance is super important when you think about performance management. What does that mean? So an organization could pivot what they need mid-year. So when you think about, sorry, I was just reading the comments. I got a little bit distracted. Someone's Pariah's calling out his boss's names. So the organizational, so in a mid-year let's say, for example, I'm going to use you again, Tyler. Your organization is going through a performance development reports at the moment, right? The last time they did this was a year ago. But do you think that the market changed and the needs for your market changed in the anywhere between the last 12 months? Was there a once the world started to open up, I imagine IFE became a really big deal again, and everybody wants the strongest Wi-Fi on their compute on their aircraft because they're traveling somewhere and they need to be able to work or stream because they're not gonna tap into the airplane's entertainment system. So unfortunately, that shift in the market wasn't necessarily addressed mid-year for any of the people going through a performance management system, a performance management report right now. And the unfortunate truth is now because we haven't communicated, the goals that we set are no longer attainable, or B, they aren't high enough for the market. So those are issues that are that are really important to address as you kind of go through what organizational maintenance looks like. This is one of the 6 purposes of a performance management system. And what we want to talk about, and what we want to go through this 8 weeks together, and what I want you all to think about as your final project is concerned, is you want to think about your project meeting the at least 4 out of these 6 points. It's really important that what we recommend to the client, that it meets at least 6 of these, because what I'll tell you right now, most performance management systems meet none of these apart from the feedback and documentation. That's it. 2 out of 6 is not an ideal space to be in. However, it does ensure job security for IO psychologists. Lastly, the comment of documentation that I meant. I remember I mentioned that it is important to document performance of employees because it does help in any form of litigation. So if an employee, especially in the state of California, feels for any reason they were wrongly terminated, the documentation of their performance, and one that goes beyond just an annual, will be the ideal way to state, no, they were not wrongly released. They were released based on merit.